What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 10 of Morbid Curator Podcast. I'm your host, RotKorpse, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about Batman Spawn #1 that came out in 2022, written by Todd McFarlane and the pencils by Greg Capullo. I got super excited when Todd first announced that him and Greg were going to be doing this book together. With Todd, I've been a big fan of his for a long time. Anywhere from his comic books all the way to his toy line. I'm a huge collector of his toys. With Greg, I've followed him a long time with his artwork. I mean, I love his art. He's got to be one of my favorite artists currently. So seeing them together, I was excited from the get-go. And then when it finally came out and hit the shelves, I had to pick it up. I actually picked up a couple different variant covers. I think my favorite one is probably just the original, the first cover with, they have two different covers where it's Batman over top of Spawn, and they have one where Spawn is over top of Batman. And I think the one where Spawn is over top of Batman is probably my favorite one. And Greg Capullo did that one, so, go figure. He's got to be one of my favorite artists. Between him and I love Ryan Stegman, and they're probably pretty close as far as how much I like them both. So most of you guys might know that this isn't the first time that Batman and Spawn have been in a comic together. It was like 1994, I believe, when Frank Miller wrote a one-shot and Todd McFarlane did the art in the book. So this isn't the first time that this duo has paired up with Batman and Spawn. But I really got to say, before I get into the spoilers and walking through the books like I usually do on these podcasts, I just want to say I really loved this book. It was, as much as I love Todd McFarlane, he's not the greatest writer, and I think we all kind of know that. And if you disagree with me, that's completely fine. I just don't think he's the greatest writer. It's not his strong suit, so to say. I love his artwork a lot more than I do his writing. But this wasn't half bad with his writing. Greg's art definitely carried the book for sure. It made the book so much more pleasant and badass, but as far as the writing, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like Todd when he did the Spider-Man run that he did. It wasn't. He's definitely grown in his writing, and I've read this a couple times, and the first time I read it, I was like, man, this writing isn't the greatest. It's still a good book, but Todd could have done better. But the more I read it and the more I understood what he was saying, the more it I was like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. This is really this actually is pretty well written. And that being said, once I read it a couple times, and I would say I'd probably give this book a 6 out of 10. It was really badass. I mean, there were some pretty gruesome points in this book. You could tell that Todd was kind of making Spawn OP in this a little bit. There was a lot of comparison with Batman and Spawn usually came out as the more OP guy. So that was kind of funny to see that, which I know I agree. I mean, yeah, Batman obviously doesn't have like powers like Spawn does, but you'll see when I walk through this book that there's a point where they kind of are an even match. But even then, Todd kind of makes it to where Spawn is still a little bit more OP than Batman. But it really was a good book. I definitely would recommend reading this, especially if you're a Batman or a Spawn fan. I mean, either one, it's such a great book. These two, the Hell Spawn and the Dark Knight together is just such a badass thing. Like, you can't get much more badass than that. So I know this is a very new book, so I'm going to go ahead and say it now that there's going to be spoilers. I'm going to walk through the book and give my opinions on certain aspects of the book. So if you haven't read it yet, you can pause it or go, come back to my episode later if you're worried about spoilers. But if you're not worried about spoilers, buckle up, because I'm going to walk through the whole thing. You guys are going to get hip or rot, as I always say. So let's go. So the first page is it's really cool. It compares Bruce Wayne and Al Simmons' life, like side by side on the panels. Like, they both are fighting, and then it shows Bruce Wayne's rich and poor, Spawn was poor. It's like comparing their lives, their lifestyles. But in the end, the point of it was that they're not so different and they're both monsters. And Spawn's like narrating this first part of the book. It mentions the night of June 26th, where both the Dark Knight and Hellspawn lost a loved one, referring to Bruce Wayne's parents and Al Simmons' wife, Wanda. And so, like I said, Spawn's narrating, and he's like talking about going into the void where heaven and hell intersect. This place is like where a heartbeat has passed through, and if he can unlock this portal, he can retrieve his wife's soul. So he's basically under the impression that he can retrieve his wife's soul if he opens this portal. But a voice in the darkness tells him that the powers that he needed to unlock this portal has been given to another monster that looked like him, and they called him the Black Beast. Which the same page, there's a huge splash page of Batman over top of Joker, and beating the shit out of him. Like, you can see blood coming out of Joker's mouth, and it's Batman. At this point that they're talking about Batman. And the voice in the void also told Spawn that he would send him Batman, but for one night, and only because Spawn has no soul. So if Spawn could get him to open the portal, it would also unlock Wanda's soul. So this is like all that Spawn can think about. Anybody who has been a fan of Spawn knows that Wanda is his like number one priority. He doesn't care about anything else in the world besides Wanda, and how he can get her back, and he just wants, that's all he thinks about is Wanda. And Alfred's like, no, not today. It's a day that Bruce Wayne should be able to just kind of enjoy, and reminisce on the times with his family. But Bruce Wayne was like, evil doesn't pause because of what we want or give a damn what today is. So in other words, he's got to do what he's got to do regardless of the shit that's happened to him. And the best way to do it is to honor his parents, So he suits up, and on the next page, it's Batman in the same alley that he was, quote unquote, Batman was born. So where his parents were dead or were killed. And so he's just walking, and when he's walking, but he's like in an unfamiliar place, even though the alley is something that he knows very well, because it's just such a traumatic thing that happened to him in that alley. But he still feels like there's something unfamiliar, and his surroundings are unfamiliar. And he comes across this guy with a mask on, and it kind of looks like an owl type mask. I'm going to go ahead and say this now. I've never read anything to do with the Court of Owls, so I don't know anything about that. But this book has made me want to reach out and go check out what the Court of Owls and Batman are, and why they're doing what they're doing in this book. So it's definitely got me hip to wanting to find out more about the Court of Owls. So I just want to make that clear right now. I don't know anything about it. I'm not to be honest with you, altogether, I'm not a huge DC guy, so I'm not even real hip to a lot of the Batman series that are out now or anything like that. I'm very familiar with Spawn, so that's really what got me glued to this book. But like I was saying, he's got this mask on, which I know is from the Court of Owls. And he's got this pearl necklace that Bruce Wayne's mother wore the night that she died. The guy says something about there being like something hidden in one of the pearls that only his father knew about. And, he's taunting Bruce with them, saying like, she shouldn't have wore, or as Batman at this point, I should clarify, he is now Batman. he's taunting Batman, saying she shouldn't have worn him that night. And Batman lunges at him, and he just like disappears, the dude with the mask, and he instantly reappears behind him, and he's just like playing with Batman, you know what I mean, just taunting him. He's like, "You're not the only monster we created that night." So at that point, Batman's like, that sentence alone, "You're not the only monster we created that night." So what is he talking about? Obviously, as a reader, we know he's talking about Spawn. But the necklace, as they were fighting over it, the necklace snaps, and the enemy, the man in the mask, turns into his natural form, which is an owl, and he just flies away. And he says, "Happy anniversary to both of you." As soon as that happens, there's like a huge sound of thunder, like a big thunder crack, and a flash of green light blinks. Spawn's eyes. This is a very cool. Greg did such a great job on this book. I mean, the art in this is just so brutal and badass, and just it doesn't get much better than this. Seeing Batman and Spawn together, he draws them so well. But so Spawn appears behind Batman, and Spawn says to Batman, "You've got something I need. You've got something I need, demon." And Spawn is just beating his ass. I mean, blood everywhere. He's every punch that he's throwing is connecting with Batman's face. Like I said, the artwork is just so good. It really carries this book. I mean, like I was saying earlier, Todd's writing, it's not horrible, it's just not the best, and I think every Todd fan kind of knows that. I don't think I'm speaking alone on this. But the artwork in this really carries this book. And I've honestly always loved the way that Greg has drawn Spawn, and has even in the very early Spawn books that he's done, it's just he's always done a great job to me, and it makes this book so much more perfect. But so Spawn, like, it's almost like his powers go away, and you find out that there's like this dead zone where warriors from heaven or hell are like useless in this dead zone. And obviously Batman is unchanged because he's human. He has no power. So like Spawn realizes he's human at this point, and he's like, "Oh shit, like you're human?" And so is Spawn at this point because of the dead zone. He has no powers. So the brutal fighting just like starts again. They're just, I mean, trading punches, and none of them are able to gain like an advantage because they're um, pretty much evenly matched at this point. And it says that this is like what the Court of Owls wanted. They want Spawn to kill Batman because they have been trying to kill Bruce Wayne for like years. And like I said, I don't know anything about this, but it makes me want to read up on it and get hip to all of the Court of Owl books that are involving Batman, because I'm very interested now after reading this. But some of the court members believe that Batman could be their salvation, like their leader, as but some of them want him dead. So there's a split going on between the Court of Owls. And tonight it will determine on what happens between Spawn and Batman. So it shows Batman hit Spawn out of the dead zone, and they go back and forth on who, they're like arguing, like, "Come to my side, no, come to my side," because they both know, basically Batman knows if he goes over to Spawn's side, he's going to get fucked up by Spawn because Spawn has powers, and like I said, Todd makes him way OP in this book. So that's one of the things. And Batman's smart. He uses his head. He's referred to this later on in the book too, that he uses his head more than the lower half of his body, like Spawn does. Spawn doesn't really use his head. He's more of just a physical contact kind of guy. And so, Batman realizes he can't step out of the dead zone without getting wrecked. But then Spawn mentions Batman killing her on the same date. And Batman's like, "Who? Like, what? Who died on the 26th? Martha?" Talking about his mom. And Spawn gets pissed. He's like, "No, Wanda. They say you're holding her soul." and it infuriates him that Batman would disrespect Wanda like that. So this right here, you kind of already, as the reader, you're realizing they don't know why they're there. Like, they both were told something about each other, but come to find out they're getting like twisted stories here. So they're realizing that they're being tricked. And Batman steps forward and says, "Here, kill me if you want. I mean, otherwise we need to talk." So he's like risking, he knows Spawn's going to beat his ass, but he's risking going up to him just to prove that he doesn't have one, like he doesn't know what's going on and they need to figure it out. And the next page is just like this group meeting, the Court of Owls, and they're meeting, and there's this man, he's asking if Batman is dead. And if not, it's another failure on their part. And that it's another failure on their part for reclaiming Gotham. And they mention they have a Hellspawn as a backup, which, as the reader, you know that he's finding out that he's been lied to, so that backup isn't going to work out very well for them. But they have another plan, and there's this a new assassin. He's like an owl samurai looking guy. He's got like an owl mask and like a samurai suit. I don't know if he has like a name or if I should know who he is. I don't know if people who's read up on the Court of Owls know who he is, or if he's just literally a new guy in this book. But that's their new plan. And that samurai guy says they both have a woman that they once loved. That'll be their downfall, which is true. I mean, they both would risk it all for the people that they love, which is Wanda and, Bruce Wayne's parents. So at this point, everybody in that room now has those same owl masks that I was talking about at the beginning of my episode, that man had with the pearl necklace. They all have those same weird looking, like, plain masks. And they say, Batman dies tonight along with his soul. So then we're back at, Spawn and Batman. And they find out that the Court of Owls are playing with reality because they're making them believe that the deaths of Spawn's wife and Batman's parents died not only in the same day, but at the same moment, which doesn't make any sense, which means that they're like capable of shifting time frames. And Spawn deals with kind of the same, it's not the Court of Owls, but it's the Court of Priests in Spawn's dimension. They kind of, like I said, Todd kind of makes Spawn seem more of like the badass, which to me he is, but to big huge Batman fans, they could think otherwise. But there's like a lot of points where they compare each other, and Spawn's comparing his army against Batman's, and Spawn kind of belittles Batman because he's human and he doesn't know what it takes to like take on a non-human, and like his army is full of monsters, and basically Batman would just get wrecked if he tried anything against Spawn's enemies, and that being human isn't sustainable against his enemies, basically. But then Batman's like, I like being human, and Spawn was like, so did I, and he shows him his face, that it's all fucking hamburger face, bad crispy, if you're familiar with the movie. But he's showing him that he's a monster too, that he was human, but now he's a monster, and this is basically his fate, that Bruce Wayne will eventually be this monster. But Batman doesn't buy it. If this was true, and if being human was so terrible, and he doesn't have these powers, but Batman was like, I would be dead a long time ago if it mattered whether I was human or not. And long story short, they just leave the Batcave because they have other shit that they got to take care of other than comparing each other. Like I said, I think that's just something that Todd threw in there just to kind of prove that Spawn was more dominant over Batman or whatever. So I really love this next page of panels. It shows a comparison between Batman and Spawn, and you realize that they're different at this point as far as how far they'll go for answers, for information. And it just goes to show how brutal and badass Spawn is. And the next page, it's the Joker. Like they meet up with the Joker, and the Joker already knows that they're like looking for the owls. So and so is he, because they're like fucking with the balance of things, and he hates that. So he's kind of already expecting Batman, but he sees Spawn and he's like, "Who's this guy?" You know, it's like he looks like he's wearing like a Joker face, like a Joker mask, you know, like a skin mask. Spawn says that he heard that Joker's working with the owls, and Joker says that he's wrong, and he takes off his like Joker mask, and it's just a like skinless face, and it's very cool art. It's so badass and brutal. I mean, if you could just imagine, like if somebody peeled their face off, that's what it looked like. And I mean, that's literally what it was, but it was so badass. And Joker says that him and quote unquote Spawny have a lot in common, and they're talking about he's talking about his face, because he's got like this hamburger face with no skin, basically like Al Simmons. You know, his face is fucking crispy and burnt to hamburger meat. So that was kind of funny. And the Joker goes on to say, like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch their eyes out. And talking about the Court of Owls and that they're pigs, and don't cast pearls before those swine, talking to Batman, which gives him the idea of the pearls, that I was talking about earlier, that pearl necklace that belonged to Bruce Wayne's mother. So it's Joker giving him more information. So this was a cool part. When Batman and Spawn finally leave, Joker says they got no idea my pets, referring to these like little clown minions, and they're kind of surrounding him. And he says they got no idea my pets what's waiting for them after the owls, but I promise you, your master and I won't be clowning around. Which he's obviously referring to Clown, from Spawn. So at this point, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Spawn or Joker and the Clown working together? What the hell is going on? It shows like I said, a bunch of these like little clown minion gremlin looking things sitting on Joker's lap. This was a pretty cool part of art, where you could see this like Joker just kind of sitting on this throne looking thing. It's got those minions surrounding him. Batman asks what was Wanda's maiden name, and Spawn's like, "What do you mean?" Like, Batman's like, the name before you guys got married. Well, she never changed her name, and uh, he said Wanda Blake. And Batman says, if you hear me call that name, be ready. And he doesn't really say much more. It's just the next page shows that Owl Samurai. I don't know his name. I'm just gonna keep calling him Owl Samurai guy, because that's the only thing I can think of at this point. He's going through that same alley and he finds the pearl, and he goes back to the Court of Owls and is talking to them a little bit. And Batman is building, like, it kind of goes to a different scene where Batman is building this specific weapon. It kind of flips back to the Owl Samurai guy talking to the Court of Owls. He says when he learns that he can save his mother, he'll open the portal. Spawn is just the trigger. So you're kind of gathering that the Court of Owls want Batman to open up this portal, and that was the whole trick, was to get Spawn to get Batman to open this portal so that he could save Wanda's soul. But obviously that's not going to happen now, because they both found out that they're being lied to and tricked. So they're just assuming that Spawn and Batman are working together, and that Batman's not going to just open the portal for Spawn anymore. So this is the next thing. They're going to try to figure out what's going on with this pearl. But as they're talking, Spawn shows up at the Court of Owls, and he's like, I've taken your boss. You want him or Batman? Batman's kind of waiting for Spawn, and he's just like getting pissed. You can tell that he's just mad, but he needs to use his brain. He's like telling himself he needs to use his brain, and he needs to not be like Spawn. And the Owl Samurai and Spawn meet up. They're actually at the Arkham Asylum courtyard. The samurai owl is like, they're all in a dead zone. They realize they're in a dead zone. The owl samurai is taunting Batman, and he's saying, without us there is no Batman, because they pretty much are saying that they created Batman by killing his parents in that alley, because at that point that was when Batman was born. So they keep referring to that as they turned him into Batman, basically. And Spawn jumps down and says, let him be. Spawn is distracting this owl samurai while Batman runs to this electrical box, and he's just kind of fucking around with it. So Spawn is trying to get these pearls from the owl, and it's kind of funny because these inmates, like I said, they're at Arkham Asylum. So these inmates that pretty much Batman put most of them in, behind bars, are watching from the inside. And so it was no accident that, the asylum was built in a dead zone, because, and most of them were put there by Batman. So no one's powers work in this dead zone. So Spawn and the Owl Warrior go toe to toe, and it's a fair fight because, they don't have any powers, and the owl discards his weapon. It was just like a samurai sword. That's where I keep getting this samurai shit from. Between his outfit and the samurai sword, he looks like a fucking samurai, all right? And the owl yells to Batman that he could save his mother's soul. He just needs to open that portal, basically. But while he was saying that, he's forgetting that Spawn's wife needs saved also. And so that kind of sparked Spawn. And we all know that Spawn will do whatever it takes for it to happen, for Wanda's soul to be recovered. And I forgot to mention earlier in the episode that, like, this whole time there's been like a clock ticking, basically, because, like I said, they were only given Batman to Spawn for a certain amount of time. It was only for that night. So once it hits like midnight, then the time's up, you know what I mean? And he goes back, Spawn goes back to his dimension. So that's a little thing that I forgot to mention. So every so often there'll be a page and it's like 5 more hours, or 2 more hours, whatever it is. But we're getting down to minutes now, and it's on like there's like 4 minutes left. And the guy from the beginning, the one that met Batman in the alleyway with the pearls, he shows up and he's trying to kill Spawn, and he threatens him, and he can't return home. Like, he thinks that he can't return home, that he thinks the time is up, but it's not. Like I said, there's 4 minutes left, and Spawn notices that he only has 1 shot left. Like, he has these he's like shooting these knives out of it, like a little wrist rig type thing. And Spawn was counting them, and he realized that he only had 1 shot left. And he tells him it better be a kill, like it better be a kill shot, because if not, you're pretty much fucked. And Spawn says, "Cut the lights," talking to Batman. He was over there messing with that electrical box, and Spawn says, "Cut the lights." So Batman hits this remote button that he had rigged up, and the lights are cut. It's like everything goes pitch black. It mentions that the owl's eyes are made for the dark. And the guy from the beginning says to Batman, quote unquote Batman, because you somehow Spawn like made himself look like Batman. Like he was in Batman's suit and everything. So the guy says to Batman, which is actually Spawn, "Your mother would be disappointed." And then so Spawn, dressed as Batman, stabs him through the chest. Batman's like, "Ow, what have you done?" And Spawn says, I bought you time." And this was like super badass. And so, like I said, they're at this asylum with all these inmates watching, and Spawn is imitating Batman. And so he killed this guy, and he's got this dude on this like spear, and he's just flaunting him around. He's just walking around the yard for everyone to see. You know, he knows that everybody's going to spread the word of what Batman did, and now they'll feel fear Batman, because they will fear if they push him, you know, hard enough that he will just kill them. So there's like a point behind what Spawn did. You know, Batman doesn't have the guts to kill somebody, but Spawn does, and Spawn's doing him a favor almost, you know, by intimidating these inmates and anybody who's watching, that so-called Batman will do whatever it takes, even kill. And Batman's like, I didn't need your help, especially not like that. And this is one of my favorite panels. There's like, with the artwork, Spawn is like standing over top of this dude, and he's got the green glowing eyes, and his hands, like, there's like that glow around his hands too, dude. And it's like such a badass. I mean, it would be a cool ass cover. Like that's just how cool this panel is of Spawn, and he like almost looks demonic. You know what I mean? And then the owl dude says, "It's the last chance to Batman. You help open the portal, or I slit Simmons' throat and break his neck." And Batman don't care. He's like, "Dude, he just fucking killed a man. I don't care what you do with him." Like Batman's in his head. He's just all like, uh, he didn't want that kind of, to Spawn. Spawn was doing him a favor, but to Batman, it's like a disgrace, or whatever. But then he says, Batman tells the owl guy, you can kill him all you want, but if you kill him, this button that I rigged up is gonna release all of the villains in the asylum, and that's a way bigger problem than me or Spawn at this point. You know what I mean? All these villains loose, and Batman threatens him that they'll kill him and hunt him down. And the owl guy thinks he's bluffing. And Batman's like, "Kill Simmons then." And that time clock I was talking about is down to 1 minute now. And the owl lifts up the pearl and asks, "Who will save your mom's soul?" Batman's like, "No one." He knows that she died a long time ago, and it's just not worth. I don't want to say it's not worth it, but he just knows that her time was lost long ago. At this point, Batman realized that the reason why they needed Batman to begin with is because he's human. And that's the one weapon that none of them have and that they lost. Spawn, everybody else is unhuman. And he realizes that's the whole point of them getting to Batman and sending Spawn there, was to push him to open this portal, and only a human could do. And you know how earlier I mentioned Batman asked Spawn what Wanda's maiden name was, and he ended up saying that it's Wanda Blake. Well, Batman shouts out Blake, and Spawn's cape opens up and like swallows this dude whole. And it's a really cool moment. Like I said, the time's up at this point, and you just see this big, huge Spawn cape wrap around this guy, and they get sucked back into this portal, and Spawn disappears because the time is up. And Batman jokes around. I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's like uh, that he wanted to give Spawn one last gift before he left forever, or something like that. It was a kind of a funny little comment. And Batman searches, and he finally finds that pearl that the owl had, that at the beginning I was talking about. It's from his mother's necklace, that she wore when she died. And he picks up the pearl, and it's like cracked. It looks almost like a I don't know if they did this on purpose or if it just so happens to like look that way, but it looked like a big ass like full moon with like a tree kind of shadowing in front of it. You know what I mean? It looked like a tree with the full moon behind it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it looked really cool. That was, and he's like, it's cracked. I wonder if that matters, if that's going to affect anything that it's cracked. And then that, so that was it for story. And then it gets into this epilogue, and there's a panel. There's like 3 panels left of the book, and one of the panels is Wanda, and she's staring at this bat symbol and doesn't know what it means. So you're kind of just like, huh, you know, Wanda is supposed to be dead, but now she's looking at a bat symbol, which is in a different dimension. Um, what's going on? So that leaves a question right there. And then there's a second panel that says, in another universe, and then it shows Father Kilgore introducing himself to Martha at a church. So you're just like, what could that mean? And the very last panel, it says somewhere in the void, and it has a picture of of Clown. Like all you see is his eyes, and you can tell it's him. I mean, he's got the face paint, and he says, "Excellent, everything is working exactly as planned, and now the next move is mine." And then it ends. Holy shit, guys! What a book! I mean, even with the not so great writing, it really, like I said, I read it a few times, and after like the second or third time, you really kind of get what Todd was trying to imply with his writing, and it makes sense. It all makes sense now. Um, and it was great. The artwork was fucking perfect. Greg Capullo, I mean, kudos to him, dude. He such a badass, and it's cool that he's like a cool guy in person too. He's not like one of those assholes that you really look up to and you really dig their work, but then you come to find out that they're just kind of like a shitty person. He's definitely not that. He's a perfect artist and a perfect human being. I mean, it's you can't get much better than that. And him and Todd McFarlane together, I mean, they go together just like Ryan Stegman and Donny Cates to me. You know what I mean? They're like peanut butter and jelly, which Ryan Stegman actually told me when I met him at New York Comic Con. He was like, I was mentioning to him that Donny Cates and him are like a perfect duo, and he literally said, yeah, like peanut butter and jelly, and it can't get more realer than that. Same with Todd McFarlane and Greg Capullo. They go together so well, and to get these two um badass characters together in the same book, um man, it really was such a great book. I like I said at the beginning, I give it a 6 out of 10, and even I mean it's close to a 7. It's very, it could be a it could be a 7 too. It's anywhere between 6 and 7 out of 10. I definitely recommend checking this out if you're into Batman, if you're into Spawn, if you're into both of them, if you're into Todd McFarlane, if you're into Greg Capullo's art. I mean, you got to read this book. It's a necessity. It's fucking awesome. I can't wait for the next issue. I mean, obviously there's going to be something happening with Clown, and it brings you back to Joker. What was he talking about with, like, he obviously Joker and Clown are working together. So it leaves you with this question, like, what's next? This was all, everything that happened was like Clown's plan. So what does that mean? I don't know. It's something that I'm really looking forward to. And if you guys are new to Todd McFarlane, if you're listening to this episode and you don't know who Todd McFarlane is, look him up. Spawn is, like I said, one of my favorite characters. And his books, they're at like 300 and something now, but I have read a lot of the early spawns, and dude, it's awesome. Like I said, the writing wasn't the greatest at the time, um, but the artwork and the stories were cool. I mean, it's such a good thing that Todd has going, and he's continuously using Spawn. But I think I'm gonna wrap this up, guys. If you want to listen to more episodes, I am definitely going to be making more. I like any type of, if you want to leave in the comments what movies you want me to review or talk about, or comics you want me to talk about, I'm open to anything. I'm always, thinking about what the next episode is going to be. So just leave it in the comments, and I'm open to anything. If you want to know where to find me at Morbid Curator Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I do a lot of TikToks now. I'm on YouTube. Please like and subscribe on my YouTube. And we're on Spotify. So, yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's been listening. My last episode, episode 9 with Cannibal Holocaust, got up to 3,000 views, which might not be a lot to some people, but that means the world to me. It's awesome that so many people are checking out my stuff, and I plan to do this for a long time. So if you guys, this is only episode 10. There's going to be so many more episodes to come, and I hope that you guys are along for the ride, because it's going to be a badass ride. So thanks again. Get hip or rot. Peace out, guys.